Assalamu alaikum. So inshallah today we're going to be talking about a very interesting character, Al-Samiri. He's mentioned in Surah Taha, and the details surrounding how he managed to mislead Bani Israel into worshipping the golden calf. There's been a lot of details that we find in our literature, but I want to actually examine who Al-Samiri was from a Quranic perspective. Because what we find in the Quran is not speculative. It's not just narrations that have been transmitted to us. They're not just stories, but actual reality. So I'll be looking at it from a Quranic perspective, inshallah ta'ala. So I'll be dividing this presentation to 3 parts. The first part will deal with how Al-Samiri managed to mislead Bani Israel, going from monotheism to polytheism is a very big step. So how did this happen over 40 days? And was there actually details that maybe we have overlooked to understand how this happened? And there's also been speculation about who Al-Samiri was. We have the name Al-Samiri. Notice it's Al with an Al, Alif Lam of definiteness. So it would indicate, and I'll explain this in more detail, that it's an Arabic name, meaning that Al-Samiri was a title and not his actual name. So I'll be going into that, but there has been speculation regarding who he was. Some say that he had supernatural powers, that he could see things that other people could not see. That actually he saw Jibreel on a horse, some say. And it's led even some to take that opinion and then add to it and say, oh, well, if he's got these superpowers, maybe he's the Dajjal. And then there's opinions related to that. So we want to not go into speculation, inshallah, but go into what the Quran says. And then the third part is related to what actually happened when Musa went for 40 days. What happened after he came back and found Bani Israel worshipping a calf, and what happened to Al-Samiri, the story behind that. So we'll begin, inshallah, the presentation.
So, first of all, who actually accompanied Musa? Was it only the believers of Bani Israel who accompanied him? One should note actually that most or the majority of those who actually accompanied Musa were not true believers. They weren't servants in the true sense. If we go to Surah Al-A'raf, Ayah 138, the interesting thing is when he crosses the sea, and this is when Fir'aun has drowned, Bani Israel actually come across some people who were worshipping idols. فَأَتَوْا عَلَى قَوْمٍ يَعْكُفُونَ عَلَى أَصْنَامٍ لَهُمْ. So it says, then they came upon a people intent in devotion to some idols of theirs. The interesting thing is the response of the people of Bani Israel. They said, Ya Musa, ij'al lana alihan kama lahum alihatun. Make us a god just as they have gods. So make us one. And these are actually the majority of the people. And you need to remember that these people had lived in Egypt under the rule of Fir'aun, or the pharaohs, from generation to generation, over many centuries. So this belief was ingrained in them. It was part of them. This is all they knew. So to remove this was difficult. Not all of Bani Israel actually left Egypt. Many of them also stayed in Egypt. And in Surah Al-Shu'ara, which is Surah number 26, from ayah number 57, it says, فَأَخْرَجْنَاهُمْ مِنْ جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ. So we removed them from gardens and springs, وَكُنُوزٍ وَمَقَامٍ كَرِيمٍ, and treasures and honorable stations. كَذَلِكَ وَأَوْرَثْنَاهَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلِ. Thus, and we caused to inherit it the children of Israel. So these gardens and springs and treasures and honorable stations were inherited by Bani Israel. So Bani Israel were involved more with the upper class of Egypt and had access to these treasures. When the people had drowned, the palaces that these people owned, they inherited. And there were also other people that lived in Egypt which also inherited. And in Surah Dukhan, وَزُرُوعٍ وَمَقَامٍ كَرِيمٍ. It's a bit of a variation. Thus, and we caused to inherit it, and other people. There were other people also living in Egypt who inherited as well. So it wasn't just Bani Israel. It was a mixed nation. So one of the points that I hear people amazed at, and they kind of look down on Bani Israel, how they were believers and they accompanied Musa and they saw the miracle in front of them, and yet they asked Musa for an idol. The reason why is because most of them were not true believers. That's the reason. And they believed that these idols brought them prosperity. So that was their belief system. If Allah doesn't will it, even if a miracle is seen, they'll still not believe. So we said that most of the people that accompanied Musa were not believers. And how is this conclusion reached? Is because of what they asked Musa. And because of them overpowering Harun and the believers. When Musa Islam left them, it was Samiri who had control of the situation. Now, we've come to believe that it was made of gold, just gold. This is actually what's mentioned in the Bible, or the Old Testament of the Jews. The Old Testament also mentions that it was Harun, alayhi salam, who made the idol. And so here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the actual person who made the idol, a Samiri. Now, in terms of the calf that was made, so after the departure of Musa salam, it says the Quran in Surah Al-A'raf, it says, وَاتَّخَذَ الْقَوْمُ مُوسَى مِنْ بَعْدِهِ. So, and the people of Musa took, after Musa left, مِنْ حُلِيِّهِمْ, from their ornaments, عِجْلًا. They took from the ornaments a calf. Now, the ornaments are not all gold. So they took all the ornaments that they were carrying with them, and they made the calf. Speaking about the calf, it says here, it was عِجْلًا جَسَدًا له خوار. It was a calf, جَسَدًا. So it was actually in the form of a calf. So it looked realistic. It was a realistic calf, as if it was a calf.
So who was As-Samiri? And as I said, the word As-Samiri is an Arabic word, and it is likely to be a title and not his actual name. And possibly it's related to what he was doing back in Egypt. So let's look at this, inshallah.
So it shows you how skilled As-Samiri was in manufacturing or designing this calf. It shows that this was his profession, that this is what he used to do back in Egypt. And this particular calf, it was designed so well, it says here, lahu khuwar. It actually had a low sound, the actual sound that a calf makes. And scholars say the actual design allowed air to go through it, and when it came out, it made this noise. And how exactly that was, Allahu Alam. He was a skilled maker of these idols and statues. Now, coming to the name As-Samiri, there have been many interpretations of who he was. He was from Bani Israel because he accompanied Musa Islam. Some people say he's from the Sumerians, but has no basis. And actually, Samiri is what's known as an Ismun Nasab. We have the word Samir. Samir is actually somebody who stays up in the late hours of the night, speaking and talking. So that's what it means linguistically. He knew the religion of the Egyptians very well. So he was actually responsible for speaking about the idols or the gods that the Egyptians had and conducting rituals. And he was also involved in making these idols or these statues. He had a big influence on Bani Israel turning to idolatry. So Samir is a person who did this, and being associated to these people, so we have Samiri, and it's Al Samiri. The al here, so the person known for this in Bani Israel was a Samiri. Now, if we go to the ayat in Surah Taha, and it mentions when Musa Islam left his people for 40 days. He went for 30, but he stayed 40 days. And in that time, a Samiri caused the big fitna. And he was very upset. فَرَجَعَ مُوسَى إِلَى قَوْمِهِ غَضْبَانَ أَسِفًا. And he returned to his people angry and grieved. So he was quite upset. And the first person he went to was Harun, because he had put him in charge. And Harun said, I couldn't do anything. If I had done anything, I would have caused division and caused even a bigger fitna. Then the interesting part is when he comes to a Samiri. Musa Islam says, قَالَ فَمَا خَطْبُكَ يَا Samiri. This is ayah 95 of Surah Taha. Khatb actually is a formal questioning. It's sort of like what you find in a court. Before I mention what happens, we have in Tafsir books, and there's a narration where he actually saw Jibreel alayhi salam. When they were crossing the Red Sea, he saw Jibreel. And he saw him on a horse, and there was dust. And he picked up some of this dust. And this was the dust that he used to throw at the calf, and it caused it to make a sound. Now, this is just a narration. There's no sanad to this story. And actually, this story does not do justice to the wording in the Quran. It also doesn't do justice to some other points. Like, for example, a Samiri seeing Jibreel alayhi salam. It doesn't make sense that he was the only one that saw Jibreel alayhi salam. So we're not going to accept this narration. We're going to go by what the Quran says. Now, obviously, it's not an Aqidah point which makes one a kafir if you believe it or disbelieve it. We believe in the Quran, obviously, every word of it. And people can interpret it in different ways. So the opinion that I found that was more consistent is as follows. So he questioned Samiri. And then his response is in ayah 96 of Surah Taha, قَالَ بَصُرْتُ بِمَا لَمْ يَبْصُرُوا بِهِ. He said, I saw what they did not see. So basurtu is intransitive. It doesn't mean seeing, physically seeing something. Because we need a maf'ul bihi. Basurtu means that I had insight, deep insight. I had knowledge and insight. And Bani Israel, and we'll find out also Musa Islam is included in that as well. Bani Israel did not see this. So I had this knowledge, this insight, and they didn't have any of it. So when he says this, what does this show about Samiri? He was pleased with his knowledge. He thought he was more superior to everybody else. And then what he says is, فَقَبَضْتُ قَبْطَةً مِنْ أَثَرِ الرَّسُولِ. فَقَبَضْتُ. So I took a handful. The translation, if you look at the English translation, it says a handful of dust. And that's related to the story that I mentioned about him seeing Jibreel. Meaning that he saw Jibreel and he took some of the dust. Obviously, if he saw him, he would see him in human form. How would he know he was a Rasul? Doesn't make sense, calling him a Rasul. The opinion that's more consistent with the Quran, here a Rasul means the Rasul that was present there. Because Jibreel is not mentioned anywhere here. In the context, the only Rasul mentioned is the one he's speaking to, which is Musa alayhi salam. He's telling Musa Islam, I took some of min athari Rasul, some of the remnants or the way of the Rasul. So instead of saying, I took something from you, he said, I took something from a Rasul. And this would actually indicate here he's saying it in an arrogant manner. Oh, I had insight, and I took some of what the messenger had, the legacy he has left, and the guidance. He took some of it, قَبَضْتُ قَبْضَةً, just a small handful. But then what does he say? فَنَبَذْتُهَا, and I threw it. So he's saying that I took something from you, I saw it, didn't like it, and I just threw it away. So you see how arrogant he is here. and very rude. And then he says, وَكَذَلِكَ سَوَلَتْ لِي نَفْسِي, and thus my soul enticed me. My soul told me to do it. So you see the language here, how arrogant he was. So in other words, he's saying that building the calf actually was based on insight, even more insight than Musa Islam. So he's actually upset that Musa was against him. Then Musa Islam responds. Now, for a person that causes corruption on the land, that's what he's doing. He says, قَالَ فَاذْهَبْ, go. This is an indication that he is exiling him from the land. فَإِنَّ لَكَ فِي الْحَيَاةِ أَن تَقُولَ لَا مِسَاسٍ. The translation of this is, then go, and indeed it is for you in this life to say, no contact, لَا مِسَاسٍ. This actually can be understood in two ways. The main story that accompanied Tafsir books is that he became diseased, he had leprosy, and he stayed away from people this is as a punishment. He stayed away from people, and anytime somebody came close to him, he would say la misas, no contact. So he ended up having no contact with other people as a punishment. So here, la misas would be the maqul. Taqulu la misas. Now the opinion that seems, wallahu alam, more correct, here, la misas is not the maqul. It's actually a hal of the dhamir anta in taqula. So where's the maf'ul bihi? What is he saying? It's not mentioned, meaning that an taqula ay shay. It's not mentioned there. And to say it, la misas. There'll be no harm or no contact. So you can say whatever you want. Leave us and say whatever you want. Just don't come back here and cause a fitna. All right, so that's another opinion about that. And then it says, وَإِنَّ لَكَ مَوْعِدًا لَن تُخْلَفَ. And for you is an appointment, meaning the hereafter, that you will not fail to keep. So it's a maw'id, it's coming. And then it describes the destruction of the calf. Interesting, it talks about it being burnt and blown into the sea. So it actually makes the opinion that it wasn't a golden calf, but it was a calf where different types of jewels, different types of metals were used. So when it was burnt, all these pieces separated and were broken off. Wallahu a'lam.
So Al-Samiri was banished from the land, and part of the punishment was that he had no contact with Musa Islam and his followers. So we can understand Al-Samiri here, his personality type. He was arrogant. He thought of his knowledge to be the highest, even more than a prophet. In fact, he looked down on Prophet Musa alayhi salam. So this arrogance caused him to deviate. And Allah does not guide those who are arrogant. Look at this lesson. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
قال فما خطبك يا سامري قال بصرت بما لم يبصروا به فقبضت قبضة من أثر الرسول فنبذتها وكذلك سولت لي نفسي قال فاذهب فإن لك في الحياة أن تقول لا مساس وإن لك موعدا لن تخلفه وانظر إلى إلهك الذي ظلت عليه عاكفا لنحرقنه ثم لننسفنه في اليم نسفا إنما إلهكم الله الذي لا إله إلا هو وسع كل شيء علما كذلك نقص عليك من أنباء النبأ ما قد سبق وقد آتيناك من لدنا ذكرا.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, to like the video, and to turn on notifications.